planting and a time for uprooting what was planted. A time for killing and a time for healing. A time for tearing down and a time for building up. A time for crying and a time for laughing. A time for mourning and a time for dancing. A time for throwing stones and a time for gathering stones. A time for embracing and a time for avoiding embraces. A time for searching and a time for losing. A time for keeping and a time for throwing away. A time for tearing and a time for repairing. A time for keeping silent and a time for speaking. A time for loving and a time for hating. A time for war and a time for peace. We are all so privileged and honored to have known Kim Lasley. We gather today to remember her life, the stories and the memories of her that are in our hearts, to lay to rest any imperfections and misunderstandings, and to celebrate what lives on in God's heart. First, our memories of Kim are those that help us to know who she was and that will live on inside of us and through us forever. Kim was a daughter, a granddaughter, cousin, and niece. Losing her father at a young age, Kim and her mother moved in with their grandparents. Together, they raised her in a devout Catholic home, where she grew to a beautiful, smart young lady who loved God and loved her family. Her family members remember her as kind-hearted, caring, and shy. An only child, she often spent time with cousins, doing the things that kids do. Mary remembers fondly spending time with Kim in her bedroom, singing to Alvin and the Chipmunks albums. Michelle has memories of Kim teaching her to play spoons, and Mike remembers them all spinning the wheel at the game of life. He also remembers that she was kind to them, even though they were her younger cousins, and tolerated them, even enduring his interviews with his toy tape recorder. I'm sure Kim was probably grateful that that was a toy tape recorder and not one of today's smartphones. Her Aunt Rosemary remembers her as a beautiful, shy young girl with brown hair at her first communion. Kim was a wife. In college, she may have been a quiet and private person, but she knew what she wanted. See, at first pass, she didn't give a second glance to the long-haired, bearded guy in the red vest. But after seeking employment and cleaning up and shaving the beard, they both ended up together one night at the same place at the same time, and he offered her a seat. She took it, and they never looked back. A devoted wife of 40 years, Rick often says that Kim followed him to the ends of the earth and back, and never complained. From Texas to Southern California, and back to Texas, and then home to Missouri. Rick's parents adored her from the very beginning. They often teased him that if anything ever happened, they got Kim in the divorce. Together, they even endured the 365 days, 3 hours, and 27 minutes that they spent apart when he was deployed to Korea by Red Cross when they were just newlyweds. It must have seemed an eternity for both of them. Kim later saw the blessing in that time, though, because she got to spend it back home with her mother and her grandparents in what turned out to be her Grandpa Pete's last year. She was able to care for him. They built their lives during those journeys, enjoying dinners and sunsets in Texas, bringing their Katie into the world in the far corner of 29 Palms, California, and later Brian in Loma Linda, California. Together, Rick and Kim enjoyed many years of great meals. They loved to eat out at great restaurants, trying different foods, even though sometimes she had to remind him that every meal didn't have to be an ultimate dining experience. Can't you just see her eye roll? They enjoyed concerts together, parenting and raising Brian, and their journey brought them back to Missouri. Their marriage endured very much, even the loss of a daughter and the midlife career change when Rick's call to serve God carried them down a long road through seminary and from social worker with Red Cross to an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church. Like Rick, Kim was an avid Cardinals fan, something her cousins tell me she got from her mother. She and Rick didn't attend games often. They tried to make them worth their while when they did, enjoying good times, good seats, good food, and good memories. They told me, though, that their last game was rather miserable. See, it was Cards versus Cubs, and they were surrounded by Cubs fans. Kim was the governor of the engine of their marriage, holding back their speed, keeping them from going off the rails and careening on down the hill. According to Rick and Brian, she didn't put her foot down often, but when she did, they straightened up and listened. She was not only a wife, she became a pastor's wife. Though it may have been a role that she never signed up for, something I'm sure that the spouses of many clergy could say, it was one she filled with grace and dignity. She and Brian endured many days and nights that we, their congregations, took him away from them. Personality-wise, Kim and Rick were polar opposites. She was a true introvert, bound to this obvious extrovert, who chose the most people-y profession out there. But they complemented each other well, filled in each other's gaps, took up each other's slack, and I don't think Kim realized it, but she may not have known it, but she had her own ministry that was so apparent. And she was there all along, offering support and love, grounding and balance to this pastor we know. Our youth group from our two churches gave Kim a framed poem a few weeks ago called The Pastor's Wife. They loved her and they recognized her gifts and they wanted her to know it. The last lines of the poem say, "Your presence blesses all of us who know you day to day. As our pastor's wife, you are serving God in a fine and worthy way." I think Miss Charlotte said it very well in our service at Bismarck last week when she told us all that Kim was the bestest. Kim was a mother of a daughter, Katie, who she loved and cared for wholly and fervently. A mother whose life and faith were deeply shaken by Katie's death at the young age of 5. A loss that changed her and challenged her in a way no parent should ever have to even imagine. Kim's faith in Christ, her and Rick's love and devotion to each other, and the love of a small Southern California congregation helped her to begin to heal from that loss. That's a chore that I've no doubt continued on through the rest of her days here with us. She was the mother of a son, Brian. I have never seen a mother's eyes light up with love and pride and joy the way hers did any time his name was even mentioned. She was devoted to him, and in him lives on some of the very best parts of her, including her kind and private nature, her quiet support and strength, but also her great sense of humor, and even her love for picking tirelessly at his father. Kim was a career woman. She spent her career mostly in healthcare. Unit secretary work is the work of an angel, I can tell you from experience. Those people that hold that seat are the Radar O'Reillys of the nurses' station. She went on to become a medical coder, and she served in that capacity in Loma Linda and Sideston and ended her career these last 10 years at Madison Memorial. It was obvious that she had a work family there. You don't work with someone for 10 years without becoming family. I got a chance to visit with her coworkers, and it was so obvious that they loved and cared for each other and supported each other, worked hard but had fun. They gave me the opportunity to look at a collage they put together from their years together, and you could see Kim's work personality so clearly in those pictures. It was really fun to see pictures of wearing Elton John glasses, and my personal favorite, the tattoo sleeves. Kim was a friend. She always had a kind word and reassurance for her friends. She took the time to lift them up Kim offered true support and encouragement to me in my walk in faith and in my call to serve God, and I will forever be grateful to her for that and for her friendship. These are the memories that we will all hold dear. My prayer, though, is that we won't stop here, that this is only the beginning. My hope is that we would begin to share memories and continue to share our own personal Kim stories today and all the days going forward. Our tasks, though, today are not complete. We must also take a moment to lay aside any imperfections and misunderstandings. Today, of course, we lay to rest the physical body that fought so hard for so long. But we also take a moment to recognize that if there's any offense that we carry in our hearts, something that Kim did or didn't do, that this is our time to let that go. That may seem unusual at a time like this, but those things can interfere with our ability to grieve and to begin to heal. Letting go allows God's grace room to grow in our hearts and to remember Kim as we lean in towards healing. And finally, today, we must look forward toward God and celebrate what lives on in His grace. Kim was a child of God. Her faith was strong. That was apparent over her life, but also in these last 3 years as she fought her own battle. It was also very apparent just a few short months ago when she made the decision to stop treatment and to come home to rest. Her faith allowed her to be at absolute peace with that decision. The grief and loss we feel today is very real. As we bid farewell to Kim, we have no choice but to walk through this valley. The valley that Johnny shared with us in the 23rd Psalm, the valley of the shadow of death. But we must remember that it is just that, a valley, surrounded on both sides by hills. We may have gotten here at times by slowly descending that hill, digging in our heels and fighting at times, and at other times by slipping and tumbling head over heels. But today, we begin our journey up and out of that valley, up the hill on the other side. Shadows only exist in the presence of light. And God is shining His eternal light in that shadow and reaching a hand down to us, holding us, tugging us, and comforting us as we slowly climb. The life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ offers us hope today and assurance that healing will come.
Amen.